This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Shovels ready. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Some of us will be shoveling snow Friday morning.
The higher elevations in northeastern Pennsylvania, Tunkhannock, through Montrose, Susquehanna, you cross the border into New York, Deposit, Hancock, Downsville, Walton, Sydney, Oneonta, Delhi. You're going to pick up 6, 8, 10 inches of snow by Friday morning.
Meteorologist Kevin Williams says not everybody will get in on the snow action, but those who do will see a lot.
So in our region, we'll go from folks getting up Friday morning and, it's just bare ground and gray and rain or drizzle. That'll be in some of the bigger cities and areas near the lakes, to a winter wonderland in the higher elevations of the Twin Tiers. And I would extend that back to include Owego and Sayre and Mansfield and Corning, world headquarters here at Bath, Coudersport, Wellsville.
Now, all of those places could be shoveling snow Friday morning. Kev has more on who gets what, where, and when coming up in his forecast. Disbanding the department. That's the other big story today. President-elect Donald Trump has vowed to break up the U.S. Education Department, even while nominating a former World Wrestling Entertainment CEO to lead it. She is 76-year-old Linda McMahon, tapped to serve as Education Secretary. Here's reporter Kristen Goodwin.
The president-elect saying in a statement, Linda will fight tirelessly to expand choice to every state in America.
Psychologist, author, and education expert Dr. Jordan Peterson says returning education decisions to the states will foster more school choice.
All of the education system, K through 12, is woke beyond comprehension. So if it's devolved down to the state level, at least there'll be a diverse range of choices, and the liberals and the conservatives will have a fighting chance against the progressive mob.
Any effort to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education would need congressional approval. The ACLU says it will sue to stop President-elect Trump from implementing a mass deportation of illegal immigrants.
It's not just the ACLU, it's also Democratic governors and mayors have basically announced a campaign of massive resistance to federal attempts to enforce immigration law.
Immigration law expert Chris Landau says Trump's border orders will face a never-ending stream of legal challenges.
They're going to try to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. We saw that already in the first Trump administration. Basically, every policy initiative the administration rolled out was challenged in court. And I think the good thing is Trump 2.0 knows how to deal with that.
There have been 8 million migrant encounters at the southern border the past 4 years. 20,000 criminal aliens have been released into this country, and one of them is on trial right now in Georgia for the brutal murder of a 22-year-old nursing student. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv, Ukraine, preparing for a significant air attack. The embassy shut down. Staff have been told to shelter in place. Correspondent Keir Simmons has more on the war from Russia.
Ukraine's grinding land battle with Russia will be bolstered by more U.S. arms. The Biden administration approving the supply of landmines, a controversial weapon. It's another major U.S. policy shift after the White House allowed Ukraine to use long-range missiles inside of Russia.
Yesterday, Ukraine fired 6 American-made missiles at Russia on the 1,000th day of the war. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg says he will agree to delay but not drop sentencing for Donald Trump in his hush money trial. That could happen after Trump leaves office in 2029. George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley.
Consider the implications of that for an American president. It would mean a local judge and a local prosecutor have basically the president on a leash. This is an unprecedented and dangerous type of condition. It's creating a type of layaway presidency. They're going to redeem him in 2029 and try to put him in jail.
Judge Juan Merchan ultimately has the final say on sentencing Trump. The president-elect was in Texas Tuesday, attending the 6th launch of a SpaceX Starship. 3, 2, 1. Trump's return to the White House could propel space exploration to new heights, especially now that SpaceX founder Elon Musk has a seat at his table. Chris Quilty is an expert on space issues.
The first Trump administration, I think, was the most consequential presidency for the space industry since probably John F. Kennedy.
Quilty expects the Space Force budget to balloon in a second Trump administration with the goal of returning mankind to the moon by 2026. Powerful bomb cyclone is bearing down on the Pacific Northwest. At least one death confirmed. Hundreds of thousands have no power.
Look at the spin on this. It doesn't get much more powerful than that when it comes to Pacific storms.
Meteorologist Janice Dean tracking that storm for Fox Weather. Cardio workouts for middle-aged people could cut the risk for dementia.
Researchers say they studied more than 61,000 dementia-free people between 39 and 70 years old. Follow-ups 12 years later showed less than 1% were diagnosed with dementia. They say people with a genetic predisposition for dementia could reduce their risk by as much as 35% simply by staying active.
Correspondent Peter King. Tennis great Rafael Nadal is officially retired. The 38-year-old is bowed out from the game he dominated for 23 years after losing his match yesterday at the Davis Cup in Spain.
I just want to be remembered as a good person and a kid that follow their dreams and achieve more than what I ever dreamed.
Nadal began playing tennis at the age of 4. He leaves the sport with 22 Grand Slam titles, second only to Novak Djokovic. Still to come on the Noon Report, a midweek edition, recount in Pennsylvania, arrests made at the U of R, and RV explosion. How did that happen? Details after this.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. There is change in the air weather-wise. I'll spell out those changes in the forecast. That's coming up in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Let's check the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. The recount is on in Pennsylvania's U.S. Senate contest. 17,000 votes is all that separates Republican challenger Dave McCormick from Democratic incumbent Bob Casey. The AP called this race for McCormick 2 days after the election. 2 weeks later, Pennsylvania Congressman Glenn Thompson thinks the recall's a waste of money, and Governor Shapiro, he says, dropped the ball.
Governor Shapiro is the head of the Democratic Party in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I would assume with his influence, he could have preempted this. Not just the chaos, the confusion, the lack of trust that has been generated among citizens, the uncertainty going forward, but the cost. The cost of this has just been enormous. And don't kid yourself, this cost is going to be coming back on taxpayers of Pennsylvania.
By law, the recount must be complete by noon on Wednesday, November 27th. That's a week from today. Counties cannot use the same machines that were used on Election Day. Undated or misdated ballots will not count either. President-elect Trump's nominated former Pennsylvania Senate candidate, Dr. Mehmet Oz, to serve as his administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. In that role, Dr. Oz would oversee the health care coverage of 160 million Americans. Oz lost to Democrat John Fetterman in 2022. Before that, he gave out medical advice on a popular TV show. 4 students facing felony charges, a 5th is under investigation after anti-Semitic posters were plastered all over the University of Rochester in upstate New York.
The Department of Public Safety is now investigating after the group allegedly plastered hundreds of posters across campus featuring photographs of the university's Jewish staff members on wanted signs. The college called them divisive and disturbing, saying, quote, "This isn't who we are." This past spring, the University of Rochester was one of many schools nationwide with protests over the war in Gaza. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Meredith Dragon is the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Rochester.
Protest is one thing, and that we've seen lots of protests, and they were done peacefully. But this was specifically targeting individuals. This was unique for a university campus to put up wanted posters for particular individuals, the vast majority of whom are members of the Jewish community.
U of R leaders say the suspects' actions do not meet the legal requirement of being a hate crime. Dragon disagrees.
This isn't solely about the Jewish community. This is really about hate. And we have to be able to stand up to hate, whether it's anti-Semitism or racism or any other form of hate.
The Monroe County District Attorney is handling the case. An RV explosion along the Pennsylvania Turnpike yesterday sent one person to the hospital. It happened at the Blue Mountain Service Plaza in Hopewell Township. That RV was parked in the parking lot at the time. Nearby vehicles were damaged. A propane leak is what caused that blast. It's expensive to buy or rent a home in New York, in case you didn't know. Michael Borges is director of the Rural Housing Coalition.
73% of all New Yorkers felt that housing affordability was a problem in their community. It's not going down, right? If anything, it's going up.
He says the cost of infrastructure in rural communities is why housing prices are so high. The median home price in New York right now is north of $450,000. That's 10th most in the country. Buffalo, New York is in the top 50 nationwide when it comes to the best cities to retire to.
The U.S. News and World Report's annual Best Places to Retire list for 2025 has come out, and Buffalo came in at number 42. To identify the best places to retire, 150 top cities in the U.S. were assessed as to how well they meet Americans' retirement needs and expectations. Top criteria include the happiness of local residents, housing affordability, tax rates, and healthcare quality. Buffalo ranked above Rochester, Syracuse, and Albany, coming in at number 66, number 79, and number 98, respectively. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
A Horseheads, New York man who was hit by a car while riding his bicycle last Friday night has now died from his injuries. Police say 67-year-old Marvin Stewart turned into the path of a vehicle on Grand Central Avenue. He was airlifted to Robert Packer Hospital, where he eventually succumbed to severe head trauma. Stewart was wearing a reflective vest at the time, but he did not have a helmet on. The driver of the car was not charged. Advanced Auto Parts is closing 700 stores nationwide, including many in New York and Pennsylvania. The auto parts supplier says it has to close shop to cut costs as the car industry continues to get more expensive.
On parts and labor, it's amazing how much everything has gone up. You know, sometimes you kind of sticker shock. You go, holy cow, that's actually that much now?
Jeff Rogers is a mechanic from Central New York. He says local mechanics are increasingly relying on sites like Amazon to order their car parts. The Bath National Cemetery in Steuben County, New York, is looking for volunteers to help place Christmas wreaths on the graves of fallen soldiers next month. It's part of Wreaths Across America, which has been honoring our soldiers during the holiday season ever since 1993. Now, the Bath Cemetery hopes to place 6,000 wreaths at the grave sites of soldiers on Saturday, December 14th. If you'd like to help out, contact the Bath VA. Let's dial up sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Chris Kreider was the hero for the New York Rangers last night as he drove home the game winner with 10:43 to play. New York won in Vancouver 4-3. Capocchio and Will Cooley both had a goal and an assist, and Adam Fox added 2 assists. New York has now won 3 straight. They are 12-4-1 on the season. The Penguins fell in overtime to the Lightning 3-2, and it was a tough loss. Pittsburgh took a 2-0 lead into the third period behind goals from Jesse Puljujärvi and Rickard Rakell, but the Lightning answered with 2 goals in the final period and then won it in the overtime. Other winners on the ice, the Jets, Oilers, Wild, Ducks, and Flames. In the NBA, the Celtics handed the Cavs their first loss of the season, 120-115. Cleveland now 15-1 on the season. Jason Tatum led Boston with 33 points and 12 rebounds. The Nets got 34 points from Cam Johnson, and they squeaked out a 116-115 victory over the Hornets. So yeah, they needed every single point Johnson scored. Dallas, Denver, the Spurs, and Lakers also picked up victories. Major League Baseball handed out some more hardware and awards yesterday, and first-year skippers collected that hardware. Stephen Vogt of the Guardians won Manager of the Year in the American League, and the Brewers' Pat Murphy took the honors in the National League. His win, kind of historic. It's the first time a Brewers skipper has won the award. Milwaukee had been the only team in baseball without the honor. That is a look at sports.
All right, very interesting. Thank you, Randy. And still to come on the Noon Report for a Wednesday. First snow of the season on the way. How to keep the peace at family gatherings during the holidays. And another pig on the prowl, this time in Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. In 1821, Percy Shelley wrote that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of our world. Now, it's unlikely that he was thinking then of the poets of our age, sequined leotards and all. Still, it's hard to argue that the most influential poet of our day, especially for young women, is anyone other than Taylor Swift. Now, Swift's dominated the music charts for almost 2 decades now, writing every single one of her over 200 songs, though at times having a bit of help. Her latest Eras tour has broken ticket sale records everywhere, selling more than 4 million tickets in 60 shows and grossing over $1 billion. And all of the fervent fanfare is about more than just the elaborate costumes, the cheeky dance moves, and leveraging the serious allegiances of Swiftie loyalists. Now, the biggest part of her fame is the lyrics. Her lyrics are so noteworthy, in fact, that more than a few universities across the U.S. and around the world offer courses to study them. And while the actions of Western academics do not always denote something of serious importance, it is noteworthy that there are now full semesters devoted to Swift, just as there are to Dickens and Poe. And Swift's cultural dominance dates all the way back to at least 2006. So there's a longevity here, not typical of normal celebrities. Her recent endorsement of Kamala Harris for president immediately went viral, though its long-term impact on the election results seems negligible. But most notably, Taylor Swift is now the new herald of the sexual revolution. Through the years, her songs have increasingly referenced her support for LGBTQ ideology, and her concerts increasingly feel like gatherings for progressive political causes and cultural movements, complete with all of the signs and the pink genitalia hats. Swift may have come onto the music scene with poppy, unrequited teenage love songs, but her music has since taken a far more cynical, though still poppy and poetic, turn against men, against traditional marriage, even against her Christian upbringing. Of course I'm pro-choice, she has said dismissively on more than one occasion, as if it's a given that to be a woman is to support abortion. Her vision is primarily reactive. So many of her songs complain about the way things are. The biblical vision of humanity and of women is far bigger and better than that. Its vision of marriage is one of growth, of exhorting men and women to be patient and kind and selfless. Its picture of love is Christ's love for the church. That's a love that's not repressive or silly or sentimental, but substantial and real. And the biblical vision also, to be clear, asks more of women, not less. It also demands both from men and culture what is far better for women. It's a vision that's both true and good, something that we know because we've seen how the church has from the very beginning advanced the cause of women. If our poets truly cared for these same outcomes that the Bible has brought, well, they'd question the ideas that aren't delivering and revisit the ones that always have. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. For more resources like this, please visit us at breakpoint.org.
Thanks, John, outside we go. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Rather cloudy, shower here and there. High temperatures 50s and near 60. Cloudy turning colder tonight with rain and fog in low temps 30s and low 40s. Tomorrow, cloudy, showers mixed with snowflakes in western New York and western Pennsylvania. Periods of rain mixing with snow in central New York and eastern Pennsylvania. High temps mid 30s to mid 40s. Watch for heavy snow accumulations over the high ground of western Pennsylvania and the Twin Tiers tomorrow night and Friday. Highs Friday in the 30s and 40s.
Okie doke, here we go. Thank you very much, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm Bob Price. Here's what's going on Wednesday, November 20th. A bomb cyclone has knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of the Pacific Northwest. One person was killed when a tree fell on a homeless camp near Seattle. Weather Channel meteorologist Stephanie Abram.
This hose of moisture continues through the end of the week for the Northwest. 60 to 70 mile an hour gusts could down trees and power lines. 2 to 3 days of heavy rain over the same areas means a flood risk, and we could see road closures due to over a foot of rain and 5 to 6 feet of snow.
Some parts of the family life listening area, western PA and the eastern Twin Tiers, could pick up a foot of snow Thursday night into Friday. For the first time, Ukrainian forces have launched American-made missiles at targets in Russia. Correspondent Keir Simmons has the latest from Moscow.
Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev writing on X that NATO could be targeted with weapons of mass destruction. Now, he's made these kinds of warnings before, but clearly we are again in a moment where the confrontation between NATO and Russia is escalating.
Meantime, the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv is closed today. It's ordered staff to shelter in place amid reports of a possible attack. Military analyst Sean Bell says Putin's army is pushing hard in eastern Ukraine.
Why is Russia pushing so hard at this time of year and losing such a huge number of people? It seems to be an all-out effort to take as much territory as possible in advance of the 20th of January.
The 20th of January is when President-elect Trump will take office. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance is lobbying U.S. senators on Capitol Hill today. He's trying to win votes for Trump's cabinet picks, many of whom face uncertain confirmation hearings. Overnight, Trump selected World Wrestling Entertainment CEO Linda McMahon to head the Department of Education, a department Trump wants to dismantle.
One other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education.
But that would require congressional approval, which has proved difficult. The department manages the federal student loan and financial aid programs. It also runs achievement tests and is charged with enforcing civil rights laws that bar discrimination. The Education Department doesn't dictate curriculum.
Correspondent Kately Huey Burns, conservative commentator Dr. Jordan Peterson favors dismantling the Education Department in the name of more school choice.
All of the education system, K through 12, is woke beyond comprehension, not least because the faculties of education have a hammerlock on teacher certification, and there isn't a more pathological discipline in the universities, bad as they are, than the faculties of education. And conservatives have been asleep at the wheel for 4 generations by allowing the malevolent incompetence of the faculties of education to certify the people who are teaching their children.
Peterson says allowing states to run their own departments of education would lead to a more diverse range of choices and give conservatives a fighting chance against what he calls the woke mob. House Speaker Mike Johnson has signaled support for a Republican bill that bans Delaware Democrat Sarah McBride, the first trans member of Congress, from using the women's restrooms inside the U.S. Capitol.
A man is a man and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman.
South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace introduced this bill. She says the sanctity of protecting the privacy rights of women starts at the U.S. Capitol. Well, it's been 30 years since Susan Smith was convicted of murdering her 2 young sons by rolling her car into a lake in South Carolina. That crime at the time captivated the nation. Now Smith is up for parole. Tommy Pope prosecuted this case back in 1994.
Clearly from her behavior, Susan has spent 30 years focused on what's best for Susan. And so I don't think justice has been served if she would get out now.
Smith's ex-husband, the father of the boys, will also ask the parole board today that Smith remain behind bars. With the busy holiday travel season upon us, one airline is cracking down on overly eager passengers. Correspondent Chris Van Clee.
Not so fast. That is the sound of someone trying to board when it's not their turn.
When I say Group 8, then you can come up, okay?
American Airlines has been testing a new boarding system in Tucson and 2 other airports. Those flyers tried to board just a little early and are asked to wait until their boarding group is called.
You're in Group 6.
Senior Vice President Julie Rath says the airline is seeing results.
It has improved the whole boarding process, so you see less crowding at the gate.
American will now add the system to 100 airports ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday, with more in the coming months.
A record 80 million of us expected to travel at least 50 miles from home during the Thanksgiving holiday. This is the Noon Report on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families most with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Chris, I know we dealt with a somewhat similar topic last time around, but with the election now decided, so many strong feelings in this aftermath, it kind of seemed worth revisiting. So I know personally some very good friends of mine expressed a lot of angst over the results and just dropped right off my radar screen for a time, I guess trying to process it all.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that, Mark, where none of us has ever been in an election cycle quite like the one we just came through. All you have to do is turn on the news, whatever your news outlet is, and just it's interesting to see how the different political parties are processing what just happened. And at a very personal level, we're all trying to not only catch our breath, but really decide, okay, how does this really impact me and my family, and what do I do now? And that's exactly why we're talking today.
Yale University's head of psychiatry came out after the election and called it, quoting here, essential for liberals to cut off Trump voting loved ones during the holidays. Doesn't really seem like particularly constructive professional advice to me.
Not only is it not constructive and professional, but it's absolutely horrible advice. At a time when we really need to draw closer to our families and really work on our relationships with our loved ones, I'm at a loss for words, quite honestly. And Mark, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen too often with me, if anybody knows me out there. But this absolutely caused my jaw to hit the floor. I could not believe that this is actually being promoted by a university, not to mention an Ivy League. But at the same time, things have really changed drastically in our country.
And it's funny, you think back in history, Yale and a lot of other these Ivy League old-time schools started out as Christian schools. Yeah. That psychiatrist called cutting off Trump voting friends essential to liberals' mental health. What might be a better way for those who didn't like the outcome of election 2024 to cope with it and hopefully move on in a more positive way?
The mandate is pretty clear in Scripture. As Christians, we need to continue to just live at peace with as far as it concerns us with everybody we come in contact. Now, that doesn't mean to allow yourself to be abused and taken advantage of and things like that. Elections don't always go the way we want it to. I mean, if you're, let's say, a Republican, you've had elections where you didn't get what you wanted, and now it seems to go the other way. The better way to cope is just realize that these are people that we have relationships with, and it's okay to say, hey, we're not going to discuss politics, but goodness, still enjoy each other's company. And then historically, that has been what we've done in the past. I remember growing up, you never even talked about who you voted for. You just didn't say it. That was how you handled this stuff in the past. And well, sadly, times have changed. You can still choose where I'm just not going to talk about contentious issues and then focus on the things that we can agree on.
You're listening to Real Answers with licensed mental health counselor Chris Anderson. So let's look at the flip side. What's a good strategy for those who were happy with how Election Day 2024 happened?
Well, whatever you do, don't gloat. Okay? At this point, you move on. It's kind of the same strategy, quite honestly. You just live at peace with folks that may feel very strongly different than you. And a real good key is to remember that somebody that chooses to cut you off doesn't mean that you have to necessarily stop reaching out. Now, if reaching out causes them to start saying, don't you contact me ever again, and if you do, then I'm going to do that. Okay, you just step back, of course. But at this point, still try to look for areas where you can make bridges and just try to relate to folks that you disagree with. But quite honestly, isn't that what we're called to do anyway? And spreading the gospel and being a good witness.
I guess it all depends on that particular relationship, the history of it.
Absolutely.
Let's dive a little deeper. The extreme level of division and the outright hostility we've seen surrounding this election. What does that say about America's present state mentally and spiritually? Because I know for me personally, not knowing what the outcome would be, I felt at peace, like Daniel's 4:17, Colossians 1:16. No matter who wins, God still still is on the throne, that's ultimately what counts.
It really is ultimately what counts. I kind of felt the night before the election as I went to bed, and I was like, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but quite honestly, we can say that every day, and we do have to focus and allow the difficulties in our lives to draw us closer to the Lord, allow us to refine our relationship with God and with our relationship with other people in the face of difficulty, to draw closer to the all-important support system that I feel like I bring up this every time I have a Real Answer segment, that having a solid support system in a Bible-believing church and with personal relationships in our lives, especially with older and wiser folks too, to kind of learn from, generations past, like how did they get through tough times? Because let's face it, there have been plenty of tough times in the world before the current set of tough times, and I got a feeling we're going to have more tough times. So let's not let our guard down as believers, especially right now, and being gracious in how we continue to reach out to those and interact with those with whom we may disagree with on a number of topics, and allow this time to draw us closer to the Lord. Really, that's where it's at.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Chris.
My pleasure, Mark.
You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson.
All right, Mark, great discussion today, guys. Real Answers available online as well. Just go to familylife.org, click the news tab on our podcast page.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We've got changes ahead in our weather. Big upper level low representing a pool of cold, moist air will be settling in across the region over the next couple of days. The result, number one, beneficial precipitation in dry and drought-stricken areas of our region. Number two, the potential of some significant wet snow accumulations across some of the higher elevations of the region. Here are the details. First of all, for this afternoon, just rather cloudy, relatively mild, a shower here and there. High temperatures 50s and near 60. Cloudy turning colder tonight with rain and fog and low temps 30s and low 40s. Tomorrow, cloudy. Showers mixed with snowflakes in western New York and western Pennsylvania. Periods of rain mixing with snow in central New York and eastern Pennsylvania. High temps mid-30s to mid-40s. You'll have to watch for some significantly heavy snow accumulations, wet snow, over the high ground of western Pennsylvania and the Twin Tiers tomorrow night and Friday. Elsewhere and otherwise, it's just rain mixed with snowflakes. Highs Friday in the 30s and 40s.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Finally at noon, another pig on the prowl. Yesterday, we told you about an elusive oinker in Tacoma, Washington. Well, it's happened again, folks, this time closer to home. Pennsylvania police are pursuing a persistent porker, and this one may be running high on the hog, as we hear from Family Life's Brian Query.
Salem Township Police said on social media that officers have been going hog wild trying to capture this little porker for the last few weeks. Police said the pig has become a local celebrity on social media, and some residents have reported feeding the slippery swine. The Post asks locals to report any sightings of the pig so it can be apprehended before he runs into the street and breaks his little piggy. The department said the pig will be taken to a rescue and put up for adoption once it has been captured. In the meantime, the pig continues to evade authorities, and if someone else does see him, he hopes they won't squeal. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Great stuff. Thank you, Brian. And that's our world, folks. The world we live in. Wednesday, November 20th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.